later, the United States gained control of the land, and the United States built their first presence in this area. That was the form of Fort Dearborn. Fort Dearborn was a wooden military outpost built right across the river from DuSable's trading post. That was where the London House Hotel is today. And in fact, right underneath the word London House there, you can see there's an engraving depicting Fort Dearborn. So those two wooden structures that faced each other across the river 240 years ago were the first two structures in what would be Chicago. But now we're going to move on to some things that we can still see, that are still around today. Let's start. If you look a good deal to the distance to our left, if you look to the left in the distance, there's that limestone clad building with four little temples in the lower roof in the corners, and then a big domed temple up on top. You see it? That's the Old Jewelers Building. The Old Jewelers Building is from 1927 by Javer and Dinkelberg architects. It's French Beaux-Arts style. French Beaux-Arts is defined by having an ornate base, a stack of floors, and an ornate top to match the base. And the four little open-air temples in the roof, on the lower roof, were originally there for fire prevention. They housed water tanks that could release water onto the building if a fire broke out. The word for those open-air temple ornaments is Tempieti, so there are four Tempieti on that building, and that big enclosed domed temple on top, that's called a belvedere. So, there's lots of fancy words for you already. That's the Old Jewelers Building from 1927. It's French Beaux-Arts architecture with an ornate base, stack of floors, ornate top. It has four Tempietis and one belvedere up on top. Now with that, let's move on to something more contemporary. On the right side of our boat, we have this very tall glass tower. This very tall glass tower is the Trump International Hotel and Tower. It was finished in 2009, designed by Skidmore, Owens & Merrill Architects. The lead architect was Chicago-born Mr. Adrian Smith. It's the second tallest building in the city of Chicago, 98 stories. In addition, look at the different roof levels. The lowest roof is the same height as the Wrigley building right behind us. And the second, that's the one with the clock tower. And the second highest roof of the Trump Tower is the same height as this dark steel rectangular building coming up to our right. Those roof levels were designed by Adrian Smith intentionally to provide continuity with the building's neighbors that it already had in the skyline. Now, directly to our right, this dark steel rectangular tower is American Medical Association Plaza. AMA Plaza was originally IBM Tower, finished in 1973, designed by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Mies van der Rohe was a pioneer in this style. We call it international or black box modern style, defined, as you can see, with dark steel, minimal ornamentation, usually rectangular pattern. Now, the thing is, Mies van der Rohe's focused on making useful interiors instead of ornate exteriors, and Mies van der Rohe was actually a professor. But not all of his students ended up liking rectangles as much as he did. Here on the right side of our boat, these two these two circular towers to our right are Marina City. Marina City was built in 1968, designed by Bertrand Goldberg. Goldberg was inspired by nature. He said there are no right angles in nature. He wanted to build round, natural-looking shapes for humans to live in. And if you look at those parking ramps, sorry they're a bit behind us, but those winding spiral parking ramps up at the bottom of Marina City. The thing is, when Marina City went up in the 60s, not many people lived in downtown Chicago. So in order to entice residents, Goldberg filled it with amenities. It had its own grocery store, movie theater, bowling alley, skating rink, marina, and those parking structures. Now, having seen these spiral parking ramps on Marina City, you may have gotten nervous imagining cars falling off to the river, but you don't need to worry, that's only happened twice. That's true. But I should tell you the whole truth, which is that it never happened on accident. Both times were stunts. Once for Steve McQueen's movie The Hunter, and the other was for an auto insurance commercial. Now, jumping ahead, on the right side of our boat, this red brick building here is the Reed Murdoch Center. It's from 1914, pretty old. It was originally a grocery warehouse back when the river was our port. Instead of full of tour boats and pontoons, this river used to be full of big steam shipping vessels that would come in from Lake Michigan and dock at warehouses like this to load and unload goods. The drawbridges would raise to let them pass. These days, we lift our drawbridges for recreational sailboats occasionally. They are still operational, all these bridges above us. And we do still have a commercial port in Chicago, but it's on the south side of the city today, not downtown on the river. All right, folks, now I need you to pay attention because I'm going to try and point something out, but it's tricky. But I think it's worth it. So look where I tell you. Hopefully you can see that if you look after the next bridge and to the right closely, you can actually notice there's a stone building right there. Exactly, thank you. In fact, it's extra large and in charge. On the right side of our boat coming up, this is the Merchandise Mart. The Merch Mart was finished in 1932, and at that time, it was the biggest building in the world by floor space. 4.2 million square feet, 400,000 square meters. The building is Art Deco style. Art Deco is defined with having vertical lines, setbacks toward the top, how it sort of stair-steps its way to the roof, and geometric ornamentation throughout. Now, the Merch Mart was designed by Graham Anderson Probst and White. Does anyone remember Marshall Fields? It was Mr. Marshall Field who bankrolled the construction of the Merch Mart to consolidate his many warehouses around the city into one huge warehouse downtown on the river. It's a mixed-use office building today, and up until 2008, the U.S. Postal Service gave the Merch Mart its own zip code. That was 60654. Now, in front of us to the right, we have this rectangular glass tower, the taller of the two. That's the new Salesforce Tower, just finished this year by Pelly Clark Pelly Architects. But coming up next, folks, if you look right in front of us, there's that glass tower. It's kind of on the right side of the boat, but mostly it's right in front of us, that glass tower with that parabolic arch at the base and a red spiral sculpture right in front of it. If the pilot house is in the way, you'll be able to see it when we turn the boat. That's called River Point. It's from 2017 by Picard and Chilton. Two things. It's one of our most environmentally friendly buildings. It's LEED Platinum certified for a combination of reasons. It has low energy innovations in it, and it was made using a lot of recycled materials. That parabolic arch at the base is actually a load-bearing support. It holds the building up, and the angle and shape of that arch is to avoid passing through the railroads underneath it and the subway tunnel underneath that. Little intermission. The train will, of course, cross the river completely undetectable, thanks to modern technology. Oh, it stopped. Dang it, it ruined my joke. Okay, moving on. And that red spiral sculpture on top of it, in front of that glass tower, is called Constellation. It was sculpted by Santiago Calatrava. All right. Now, on the right side of our boat, this glass tower with an alarmingly narrow base to our right side is 150 North Riverside Plaza. It's by Getch Partners from 2017. Here's how it stays upright. Oh, I'm sorry. These diagonal steel beams above us, they focus its weight to its central core, and inside the top of the tower, there are 150,000 gallons, or 400,000 liters, of water in a mass damper system. When wind blows against the building, the water in tanks on tracks is shifted against the blow of the wind. It would stay upright without the mass damper, but it prevents it from swaying nauseatingly on windy days. And actually, mass dampers are pretty common. They were not invented for that building there. Let's bounce to our left. On the left side of our boat, this glass tower is Bank of America Tower, just finished in 2021. These shiny diagonal supports it has are meant to remind you of the diagonal undersides right behind us we just talked about of 150 North Riverside. These two glass towers are both by Getch Partners, and they're meant to be unified in style with the diagonal elements they share along the river. Let's bounce to our left. Stick to our left, rather. This one's one of my favorites. This is the Civic Opera Building. The Civic Opera Building was finished in 1928. It was designed by Graham Anderson Probst and White. It is home of the second largest opera auditorium in the United States. 3,500 seats behind this big wall labeled for your convenience using a Roman-style U in the word building, and the whole building looks like a giant throne. It has 2 armrests and a backrest. The seat faces west. People have theorized that 20th century railroad magnate Mr. Samuel Insull, who bankrolled its construction and lived in the penthouse at the top for a year until he went bankrupt, wanted the Opera House to be a throne overlooking his railway business empire to the west. Maybe. But the truth is, Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White probably designed those narrow sections independently of him to allow for cross-ventilation. Letting the breeze easily cross through the windows was very important before air conditioning was common, especially in a stone building baking in the summer sun with so many floors, like the Merch Mart. Nope, Opera House. Oops. Like the Opera House. Now, let's look to our right. On the right side of our boat, below street level, is the train shed of Chicago Union Station. The train shed, that means that's where the platforms are, where passengers get on and off the trains. Now, what the train you can see right there is a Metra train. That's our commuter rail system that thousands of Chicagolanders use every day to get between the city and the suburbs. Chicago Union Station is also Amtrak's 3rd busiest station in the United States by passenger movements overall. Do you have a question? If you do, just remember it, okay? One moment. I'm gonna come back in a moment, okay? Okay. So, first of all, I do have to have you look way up and to the left, because way up and to the left, you can see that black tower conveniently right next to the sun with 2 white antennas on top of it. That is the tallest building in the city of Chicago. The name of it is spelled W-I-L-L-I-S. That's pronounced Sears Tower. Its original name was Sears Tower. Its official name since 2002 has been Willis Tower, but in our hearts, for the most part, it remains Sears Tower. We should get a pretty good view right in front of us, all the way from the bottom to the top of the Willis Tower as we turn the boat around here. So keep your eyes up for that, and I'll be right back. On the 103rd floor of the Willis Tower. So that's on the 103rd floor, but the building, the Willis Tower, originally the Sears Tower, as we all know, was built in 1974, designed by Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill Architects. The lead architect was Mr. Bruce Graham. The lead structural engineer was Dr. Fazler Rahman Khan. It is the tallest building in Chicago. It was the tallest building in the world for 22 years, from 1974 until 1996. The reason why it had such a long reign, 22 years as tallest in the world, no building that's been tallest in the world since then has been tallest in the world that long. The reason why this one was the tallest for so long is because this is basically as tall as anyone figured out how to make a building out of just structural steel. Because this remains the tallest steel-framed skyscraper in the world. The thing is, buildings that are taller than it, built since then, use newer technology that make composite frames using combinations of steel, aluminum, and concrete, among other materials. This remains the tallest entirely steel-framed skyscraper in the world. Now, I haven't told you how tall it is yet. It's 1,454 feet tall. That's 443 meters tall, and it has 110 stories. The observation deck is on the 103rd floor. I don't know what's from 104 to 110, and I could Google it, but actually I like the mystery. I always think it's fun to wonder what could be up there. Anyway, and one more thing, it has 104 elevators. Very few of the elevator shafts in that building go all the way from the bottom to the top. If you are heading to an office above the bottom third of the building, you'll have to ride 2 or 3 elevators on your way up, reaching the top of one elevator's shaft, having to walk across the lobby to get to another and start anew to continue your journey up. That's, of course, that elevator relay system just prevents an excess of floor space from being elevator shafts, which would be a hindrance to rental income. And let's see here. I was going to tell you 2 more things. Oh, number 1, If you do go up to Skydeck, they're an exception. You just one elevator all the way up for people that go up to Skydeck. And its name. It was originally owned and occupied primarily by the headquarters of Sears Department Stores. They moved out and sold it in the 90s, and then the new owner, Blackstone Realty Group, sold the naming rights of the building to the Willis Insurance Group of London, England. Willis only owns the naming rights. Blackstone still owns the building itself. Okay. Oh, there's a train pulling into the station to our left. Always nice when we get to see some motion down there. Now, let's jump ahead and to our left. Ahead of us and to our left, there's that limestone building with the greenery in the corner there. That is 2 North Riverside Plaza. 2 North Riverside is from 1929 by Holabird and Root. It's Art Deco style, vertical lines, setbacks toward the top, geometric ornamentation throughout. It was the first building directly over the railroad tracks when Samuel Insull, who owned the rail yard, had the idea to make some money by selling the air above the land he owned. That's called air rights, the concept of selling the right to build in air above land you still own, and you stipulate in the contract how you will minimize the way that you'll affect the land as you build on it. Anyway, Samuel Insull didn't invent air rights, but it was invented around that time, the 1920s. Let's jump ahead to our left. Up and ahead to our left, look at those white steel crisscrossing beams on the roof, that white steel X on that gray roof. Those are called trusses. That's a truss system. Here's why. The south end, the one closer to us, of this gray building on our left, is built directly over a really dense area of train tracks underneath it, which took up so much space, there wasn't much space left to hold the building up on the ground. So instead, the south end of it is structurally hanging from the trusses on the roof rather than being supported from the ground up. Obviously, that can't be the whole building or it would be floating. It's only the south end of it that's hanging from above rather than supported from below. It's by Perkins and Will Architects from 1990. The building's been owned by the Boeing Company since 2002, but it was originally the headquarters of more of a down-to-earth company, that being Morton Salt. All right. Now, folks, I need you to look to the right. You're going to get a quick view of one of my favorite little spots in Chicago coming up that I hope you'll have a chance to try. The thing about Starbucks is that Chicago was the first city outside Seattle to have a Starbucks. We were the first step that Starbucks coffee took on their journey to global domination. Now, on the right side of our boat, this red brick building is the Great Lakes Building. The building itself is from 1912, but it stands on the location where in 1860 a temporary convention center called the Wigwam was built, which hosted the convention that nominated Abraham Lincoln to run for president, right there where that brick building stands today. And to add on to that, so that national convention was held in 1860. That was only 27 years after Chicago first incorporated as the Township of Chicago with a population of 350 people. That drawbridge up there to our left has been up for 20 years. It is a defunct railroad bridge. It's permanently upright to let big boats go underneath it if they need to, but there are no longer trains that use it, so it's just upright permanently. Now, let's see here. I was going to tell you, all right, I've been talking so much about Chicago, but I haven't said where the word Chicago comes from. Well, French explorers first arrived here in the late 17th century. The native Potawatomi people who lived in the area referred to this location as Chicagua. The Frenchmen adopted it, that became Chicago, but the Frenchmen never knew what it meant. Chicagua translates to the place of bad smells. That's because the river flowed through that swamp we mentioned, and in that swamp grew an abundance of the species of wild onion. In the summer heat, those onions would ripen and stink, and that's how the Potawatomi named this location. So New York is the Big Apple, and now you know that Chicago's the smelly onion. All right, moving on. On the right side of our boat, you makes it a great fishing spot. We are very proud of how much we've cleaned up the Chicago River. It used to be much dirtier. It used to only have about 2 or 3 species of fish barely surviving in it. These days, we have 50 species of fish that live in the Chicago River, along with reptiles and birds and amphibians and all sorts of good stuff. That being said, the fishing is catch and release. It's not a clean enough river that you'd want to eat anything you catch in it. Okay, moving on. Hello. After the next bridge and up to our right, there's that limestone-clad tower with vertical lines, a big setback in the middle, and a spire at the top. That is the LaSalle Wacker building. It's on the corner of LaSalle Street and Wacker Drive, probably a coincidence. It was built in 1930, designed by Holabird and Root in quintessential Art Deco style. Remember, Art Deco, vertical lines, setbacks toward the top, and just like the Opera House, this one also has a big central setback throughout most of the building that created those narrow sections to allow for cross ventilation through the windows. Now, folks, after the next bridge and up to our right, there's that glass tower with the sort of lattice work of concrete ornamentation going all the way up to the top of the building with the peaked roof. That is 77 West Wacker Drive. It's by Ricardo Bofill from 1992. It's postmodern style. Postmodern, that's a fancy phrase, but it's pretty easy to spot. Postmodern style means mixing past with present. It's got Roman-style arches on the first floor, modern glass and steel throughout, and a Greek temple-inspired roof on top. Past and present, that's postmodern. And now for something completely different. To our right is the shorter 55 West Wacker, a great example of brutalism. Brutalist architecture is not meant to be an insulting word. It gets its name from the French word brut, meaning raw, referring to the raw appearance of its exterior. 1968 by C.F. Murphy and Associates. Directly to our right, this green, dark gray tower is home of the Leo Burnett Advertising Agency, a company that you might not know by name, but you do know some characters that they created, including Ronald McDonald, the Keebler Elf, Snap, Crackle, and Pop, the Jolly Green Giant, and Tony the Tiger, just to name a few, all originally Chicagoan from Leo Burnett. Now, coming up ahead of us to the right is the old Jewelers building. We already talked about that at the very beginning. But in front of us and on the right side of the river, it'll be up to the right after this bridge, is a green tower with a golden spire on top. That's the Carbide and Carbon building. Green tower with gold on top. It's from 1928 by the Burnham brothers, built during Prohibition, when all alcohol was illegal in the United States. That green tower that tapers up to a decorative golden topper is meant to resemble a champagne bottle in protest to Prohibition. It's the only building in the city clad with green terracotta tile, and the gold on top is real gold leaf. Now, directly to our right, this tall, skinny tower is the Mather Tower, 1929 by Riddle and Riddle. But I do want to move on, because I want to jump ahead and look to the left, because right in front of us, ahead of us on the left side of the river, is that white tiled building with a clock tower on top. I mentioned its name briefly. What's its name? The Wrigley Building, exactly, with the clock tower ahead of us. The Wrigley Building was finished in 1924, designed by Graham Anderson Probst and White Architects. Now, the Wrigley Building is French Beaux-Arts style, ornate base, stack of floors, ornate top to match the base. And the Wrigley Building is clad with over 300,000 individual white glazed terracotta tiles. Terracotta is so common in Chicago, not only downtown, but all throughout our neighborhoods, because in the early 1900s, terracotta, a type of clay, was cheap to buy and easy to make look fancy, and fireproof, one of the earliest fireproof materials we used to protect our city after the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871 destroyed a third of the city of Chicago as it lay back then. After that, we took fireproofing pretty seriously in Chicago. That's a legacy we still have today in our construction. Now, directly to our left, this limestone-clad tower with an ornate cathedral-looking top the wind's catching the American flag at the perfect angle for us right now up there. That is the Tribune Tower. In the 1920s, the Chicago Tribune held a contest seeking the most beautiful office tower in the world to be their new home. They selected that neo-Gothic style design submitted by Howell and Hood Architects as the winner, bankrolled its construction, and was headquartered there from 1925 till 2018. In addition, embedded within the walls of the Tribune Tower are genuine pieces of the Berlin Wall, the Great Wall of China, the former World Trade Center, the Alamo, many other newsworthy pieces, visible and labeled on the outside of the building. You can go look at them when you're done with us. Now, let's look to our right for now. Way up high directly to our right is a tall, white, rectangular building. Tall, white rectangle with vertical windows like stripes up to the roof. That's the Aon Center. The Aon Center was built in 1973. Does anyone know its original name? No? Standard Oil Building. It was the Standard Oil Building, then the Amoco Building, and now the Aon Insurance Center. If anyone thought it was the Prudential Building, that's right next to it, but it was never this one. Now, the Aon Center was originally clad with imported Italian Carrara marble. Expensive stuff that made the whole thing glisten in the sunlight, but after 9 years, those plates of marble, 3/4 of an inch thick, started to crack and fall to the sidewalk. The city made the architects reclad it in a sturdier stone, and what you saw today is Carolina granite. Now, the process of replacing the marble with the granite cost $80 million. That was half what it was to build it, an expensive mistake that goes to show never take marble for granite. Yeah? Now, that whole story's true. Everything I said is true, although I will admit that my delivery on the joke can be rocky. However, I'll admit, I already admitted that, never mind. I just need you to know that my boss hates that joke, and frankly, it takes real stones to tell it. Now, moving on. In front of us and up to the right, there is this very tall blue glass tower. Very tall blue glass tower with a bit of a wiggly shape ahead of us. That's the St. Regis Chicago. Finished in 2020, it's 1,200 feet or 365 meters tall. Currently the third tallest building in the city, and the current tallest building in the world designed by a woman, a lead female architect. That woman is Jeannie Gang. She's based right here in Chicago with her firm Studio Gang Architects. Now, the middle tower of the three main towers of the St. Regis structurally does not rest on the ground. It's suspended in the air using cross beams between the other two. That allows for this driveway at eye level under the middle tower. And then up near the top of the tallest tower, there are 2 floors missing. 2 floors missing up near the tallest tower there, up near the top of it. As the building went up, the architects noticed that the wind was causing the steel frame of the building to sway more than anticipated. Now, the steel frame could bend in the wind all day long and stay upright, no problem. The issue is that it was bending so much, it risked cracking the windows. So in order to protect the windows and increase the value of the condos on top, they made the choice to not build the interior of the 84th or 86th floors, to instead let the wind flow through the building. That's called a through feature, and the elevated utility shaft is still enclosed in the center of the space. Okay, now, folks, moving on. As we approach the easternmost point of our tour, I'm going to tell you a little about the Chicago River itself. In the city of Chicago's earliest days, we treated our river as any industrial city of the 19th century would treat a river. In a word, badly. We threw all of our waste, be it human, animal, or industrial, into the Chicago River, which flowed to Lake Michigan, which is our source of drinking water. By polluting it, we were poisoning ourselves. We knew we had to solve this problem. Being Chicagoan, we worked hard and tried our best to make it someone else's problem. Instead of solving the issue, we made it flow away from town by making the Chicago River the only natural river in the world permanently reversed by humankind. Here's how. Not far to the west of the Chicago River is the Des Plaines River, which is separate from the Great Lakes and flows toward the Mississippi to the west. To carry our waste away, we connected the Chicago to the Des Plaines by building a canal between them, named the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal. And at 3 a.m., January 2nd, 1900, we blew up the dam holding back the river. It filled in the canal, connected to the Des Plaines at a lower elevation than the lake. So with a new lowest point to flow toward, the Chicago River reversed, taking water from the lake to the Mississippi River Valley for the first time in history. As our sewage flowed away, not all of our neighbors were as pleased for us as we were for ourselves. In fact, the states of Michigan, Indiana, and Wisconsin jointly sued Chicago in federal court for draining Lake Michigan. And they proved that after 400 years, our reversed river would take so much water from the lake that parts of it would no longer be navigable. So we were forced to build, right in front of us, the Chicago Harbor Lock, a series of 2 steel gates built in, opened in 1938. They are the only direct connection between the lake and river, but still separate the two with those series of 2 steel gates, built for one reason: to slow down the flow of lake water entering the still reversed, but much cleaner than it used to be, Chicago River. I'm going to get off the mic for a minute or two to let you enjoy the view here. Reminder, do not stand in any chairs or benches, and I'll get back on the mic in just a moment. Stories tall, and each has a private elevator to its private rooftop terrace. They do sound nice. If you're looking for a home, I'd recommend the townhomes at Riverview. That being said, I'm not much of a real estate buff. I don't know what they sell for. I do know that not many tour guides live there. In addition, Riverview is not the only building with green glass along the river. Lots of architects love to use green tinted windows to match the greenish color of the river itself. Matching the surroundings like that in architecture is called contextualism. But let's talk about the river's color. It's natural today. This green color today is natural, created by the fact we have a clay riverbed that green algae grows on, and the water that comes in from Lake Michigan is quite clear, so we can see the color of the algae through the water. That being said, it's true that every year, once a year, the river becomes unnaturally green when on the Saturday before St. Patrick's Day, the Plumbers Union in Chicago dyes the river a bright neon green. The dye the plumbers use is certified biodegradable. It's made completely out of vegetable material. Here's how they do it. They sail a few boats up and down the main branch, accompanied by drummers and bagpipers. They throw the dye into the water, which is actually an orange powder when it's dry. It dyes the whole main branch bright green for a day or two, but it takes a good deal over a week for it to completely flow downstream and disperse altogether eventually. Until, of course, we do it all again the next St. Patrick's Day. All right, we're going to look forward and up to the right. Ahead of us and up to the right, we have that limestone tower with a yellow dome on top. We'll see it again to our right after this bridge. That's the Hotel Intercontinental. Finished in 1929 by Alfred Alschuler, nope, by Walter Alschlager, the dome on top at one point was meant to be a blimp dock. In the 1920s, commercial airship travel was getting off the ground, and the club said, let's get ready for the future to receive our rich and famous guests directly from the sky as they blimp around the globe. It was a miscalculation. Interesting airship subsided, especially after the Hindenburg disaster, and the Hotel Intercontinental has never received a guest by balloon. Now, we're going to look forward and up to our left to wrap up. A good deal ahead of us to our left is that skinny limestone tower with vertical lines. That is 333 North Michigan Avenue. It's from 1927 by Holabird and Root. Vertical lines and setback toward the top, that makes it Art Deco style. And then after the next bridge to our left, that limestone building with an open-air temple on top is called the London House Hotel. It has an ornate base, a stack of floors, and an ornate top to match the base. That makes it French Beaux Arts style. It's by Alfred Alschuler from 1923. Now here's the thing, folks. The idea behind both the vertical lines of Art Deco style and the matching top and base of French Beaux Arts style was to get you excited about how tall these buildings were. Because in the 1920s, the architects were so excited about how tall they were building these skyscrapers. These were skyscrapers in 1920 that they wanted to get you to look at the top of the building. So they designed the ornate top to match the base to give you something to look at up there, and they designed the vertical lines meant to draw your eye continuously up toward the top of the building for Art Deco style. And remember, the London House Hotel stands where in 1803 Fort Dearborn was built, right across the river from Jean-Baptiste Point de Sable Blanche having trading post from 20 years earlier, 1783. Those two wooden structures that face each other across the Chicago River in that forested swamp on the shores of Lake Michigan 240 years ago. Now with that, folks, we're going to be approaching the dock. Now let me tell you a few pointers. As I mentioned, we're going to end at a different dock from where we started. Let me tell you how to get to where you're going. If you want to get back to Michigan Avenue, where you found us today, you can go up all those stairs at the bottom of the Trump Tower Plaza, walk between the two towers of the river. You'll be right at Michigan Avenue. But from this dock, you can also go the other way. There are stairs and an elevator up to street level at Wabash Avenue to our left. So if you want to go that way, you can just go along the riverfront all the way to the other side